buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends. Welcome to the 6 o'clock club, the unofficial club where the rules are made up and the facts don't count, right? I mean, no, this is where we hang out and do our thing here. We are ready to go in this, the most beautiful of mornings here in the state of Alaska. I mean, the blistering temperatures of 41 degrees down here on top of the world in Homer. I hope you are staying warm and dry wherever you are. We're ready to go on this magnificent hump day. And we've got a dynamite show for you today in hour 2. I mean it this time. In hour 2, we're going to be joined by State Senator Mike Shower, who is going to come on board and be part of the show today for the Shower Hour of Power in hour 2. And that's where we get a chance to talk with him for the full hour about whatever we feel like. Now, he's running for lieutenant governor as well. So it's kind of a twofer. We get his take as a current sitting senator, and then we get his take as to what's happening in the, in the race and what he brings to the table as far as being the gubernatorial candidate for lieutenant governor in running with Bernadette Wilson here in the coming year. So it should be a fantastic offing here in hour 2. This was, of course, last week we had him set up to be on the program, and he was a little bit under the weather and didn't make it to us. So this week we're going to be ready to go, and we're going to be rocking and rolling and doing all that kind of stuff. And we'll be continuing here. All right, let's dial in for what we've got going on here in hour 1. Hour 1 today, it's going to be you and me, and by you I mean I'm opening up the phone lines this morning. Now I know in hour 1 it's hard to get people to actually pick up the phone and talk about things because it's early, man. Not everybody's been up as long as I have, and that's fine. It's perfectly okay. But if you feel so inclined to give us a call and talk about the things that are on your mind or on your heart, today is the day to do it because we're opening up those phone lines for you to get a chance to come on board and chat with us and dive in and give us your thoughts on everything that's going on around the state. Now, yesterday, I came to the conclusion that some of my listeners in the chat room, they must really hate me, right? I only say that because I feel like I feel a little used, man. I feel a little used. These guys, they like to just throw out things that they know are good. I feel like a wind-up toy, right? They wind me up and then they let me go, and then they just giggle and while they watch me just sputter and spit and be upset about things. Yesterday, it was the discussion on ethics, and we are going to still pick that up today. And I'm going to explain a little bit about why I was so agitated yesterday, and I'm going to attempt to remain calm throughout the beginning of the first hour of the show this morning, which because and sometimes you'll see them. They just sometimes they'll just start throwing things out there like, hey, Dukes, why don't you talk about property taxes? Or why don't you talk about deferred maintenance? Or why don't you, just these things that they know are just going to get me wound up. It's sometimes I think I'm just a plaything for people's amusement. They just want to watch me go and spit and sputter and stammer like a little, like one of those little monkeys. One of those little cymbal clashing monkeys. They just spin me up and watch me go. But we're going to go into some of the stories today and talk about a few things that are going on around the state. But the phone lines are open. So if any time you want to try and get me back on, either back on track, or maybe you maybe you want to try and wind me back up and get me off track. I don't know. 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864 is the number this morning. And I will take any comers. There's any topic you want to chat about today, it's important. Okay. So let's I know people are like, I think those dial-up phones are in the museum. Okay. I didn't literally mean spin the dial. I mean, open up the app on the phone and then tap the little screen to get the numbers. And you guys are so pedantic, man. This morning, 319-527-3864. People are already like, well, you know, there are no dials anymore on the telephones. And you could be surprised. Those dial phones still work sometimes. So don't think that there's some people listening to this show that I guarantee you are dialing it with an actual dial. We'll see how that goes here this morning. Anyway, so I am going to talk a little bit about the ethics violation. I'm going to remain calm. We're also going to talk about the latest, the certification of a new initiative that Nancy Dahlstrom has certified. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We might talk about the grand jury. We're definitely going to talk about the the meltdown of civilization that appears to be happening in Anchorage. I mean, it's just, what is going on there? And is it spreading to other parts of the state? That's the bigger concern for those of us that don't live out there. Is that what's going on there? Let's talk about that here as we go through. But meanwhile, as I said, your calls remain supreme. So let's jump over to the telephones, because we've got a call on hold already this morning. Somebody is up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to go. So let's open up the phone lines and see who's there. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Brother Mike, this is Hillbilly up in Fairbanks.
Well, hello, my friend. How are you? It's been a coon's age since I talked to you, my friend.
Been a coon's age, all right. I've been up in the woods living, and
yeah,
I finally got so sick this last couple of months, that my family's drugged me into town, and I'm living in a dry cabin over by Esther now.
Oh, okay.
So now I can talk to you. I've always listened to you. I've listened to you for years and years, brother.
Right. Well,
but I just wanted to let you know I'm still alive. Sometimes barely, but I'm still alive. But now I'm going to live in town, so now I can make comments. And you know me, my first comment is going to be the same as I've always had for you, and it applies to this Kawasaki thing. It applies to everything that you guys talk about all the time. But you got to understand the three principles of hillbilly when it comes to politics. They're all in it together. They're doing it all on purpose. And it's about to get a lot worse. Okay? That's the truth, Michael. And you've heard it. And I've even heard you quote it over the years a few times here and there. But that's the truth. Everybody thinks Trump's going to save the country, or this guy's going to save the country. It's like George Carlin said, there's a great big club, but you ain't in it.
Right.
And it's all being done together on purpose to control the economy. And you can look at what's happening in gold and silver, and that tells you what's happening to our economy.
Right.
Your money ain't worth hardly anything. Even 20 years ago, it was worth twice as much as it's worth now.
Right.
They're throwing it all down the tubes and us with it. And I appreciate you guys so much, and I've prayed for you all these years. I've prayed for you guys, but ultimately you got to read your Bible, and it's going to get as bad as that before Jesus gets back.
No, I mean,
You know what I mean?
I have quoted that many times over the years because you're right. They're all in it together, and they're all doing it on purpose. It seems like it seems to be kind of a plan when they're pushing things around, and again, kind of taking control of the little guy and of everything that's going on, and creating some of this frustration, right? I mean, sometimes it's that frustration that we feel that makes people disinterested in participating. And I think that might be part of the plan.
Well, obviously that they don't want people to vote. That's why they throw their elections into all kinds of chaos, so that they give you every reason not to vote. All right. And if you really want to change things on a state level, you might be able to here, because when they cut us off, we're going to be available to be our own country at that point. But what I'm saying is, if you were to get a hold of the fact that only 18%, now is that 18% of the registered voters or 18% of the available population that could vote?
That's registered voters. That's registered voters. That's what they say. So,
all right, well, less than half of the state is registered. So that means it's only 9% of the actual people who could vote. So just figure that out. If you can reach out and find out why those people aren't voting, then you could change that, and you could have 10% of the population of the state could create a new party and vote any way you guys want to. The libertarians could do it. Anybody could do it. But you have to find out why those of us who don't vote.
Right. Well, and you said those of us. Are you not voting, Hillbilly?
I'm one of those that don't vote. I very seldom vote. I think the last time I voted was probably 2 or 3 presidents ago.
And why?
First time
so let me take your advice. Why don't you vote? If you're saying we got to find out why they don't vote, why don't you vote in the elections?
Okay, 2 reasons. One, because as I told you, I believe they're all in it together. So it won't matter who gets elected. In other words, I look at it from a theological standpoint. When Satan tempted Jesus Christ, he said, all the kingdoms of the world are in my hands, and I give that power to whomever I choose. If you bow down and worship me, I'll give it to you. Now, if that didn't have some truth to it, then it wasn't really a temptation, was it? So we got that much to know. Whoever gets voted in there is either going to become corrupted. Like, look at Jimmy Carter. He was a Baptist, really good guy, man. But he still got corrupted. And he gave away the nuclear bomb to China in order to try to bring peace. Good intentions, but the devil still can manipulate them, or he won't let them in, or he'll kill them. That's how I believe. And then secondly, I believe that voting isn't even anonymous anymore. That voting paper they want to give me has a UPC code on it. What's that about? And so it's not a secret ballot anymore. And so personally, I just don't bother unless there's somebody on there really important that I think needs to be put in office and given a chance. But that very seldom happens to me personally.
Well, it's
I don't know.
Again,
the rest of them, why they don't bother to vote.
I feel like, like I said before, Hillbilly, is one of the things that I said is that I vote defensively. I feel sometimes the same way that you feel. I feel the same way that sometimes I've heard some other people feel, where they're frustrated that it just doesn't matter, that the fix is in, that they, I've heard all the excuses, and I sometimes feel those things. But I've made a decision that no matter what I do, I'm going to vote defensively, because I know how they're going to vote. I'm at least trying to counter that vote.
I do understand that, buddy, but you still got people in civilization. I pulled out of civilization when I came to Alaska, and so I didn't have to worry about who's on the school board. I don't care who's running for this or that. I don't pay taxes. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So I just don't have much reason to, personally. Now, that's not, maybe I'm an exceptional case, but there's 90% of the people in this state who could vote and don't.
Right.
And that's who you got to reach
if
you're going to change anything. Fighting over that 9% doesn't make any sense. And
Right.
you just got the people that are pushing the power back and forth and taking turns, you know.
Well,
And I'll
I,
let you go back to whoever's else.
well, I appreciate it. Thank you, my friend. It's good to hear from you.
I love you, brother.
Yeah, love you. Thank you, brother.
I love listening to you.
Appreciate
We'll call once in a while.
All right. Thank you, my
All
friend.
right.
Appreciate you coming on board. Yeah. I mean, and I totally understand where he's coming from there. You know, in a lot of those areas, and it is frustrating, but we've got to participate. And he's making a valid point when you're talking about when you only have, I mean, if it's 18% of the registered voters, and he's right, not everybody's registered to vote. I don't think it's half, but even if it's, you know, let's say it's 12%, let's split the difference, split the difference between the two and say it's 12% or 13% of the electorate. When you have 13% of the electorate directing everything that's going on in the state, we've got a problem, right? We've got a problem. And that's where the special interests really reign supreme in those areas. When we've got such a small percentile of the people voting, that's where the problem lies, is right there. 100% for sure. All right. Well, wow, it took us right to the first break. So we're gonna go and do that right now. We're gonna come back. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll return with more here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Sorry. Had a bit of a kerfluffle there. He wasn't loud enough, and I think maybe
Thanks
it was
so much.
that's still
Hold on.
still quiet. What's the deal, man? I'm trying to get the phones to, you know, sometimes they work great, sometimes they're not so great, and I don't know why. All right. Let me boost this just a little bit here. How about that? Let me boost the can I do that? Yes. Can I do that? Yes. Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna give it a little bit of a boost here. We'll see how it goes. All right. Good morning, my friends. How are you doing this morning? Are you ready to rock and roll? We're going to jump into this and keep things going. I'm sorry. I'm over here just doing my thing. Okay. That's good. All right. Well, how is you? How is you? Are you ready for another beautiful day in our neighborhood? I for one am ready to go. Let me just excuse me while I whip this out here over here. All right. Got it. All right, let me go over to the chat room and see what you guys have to say this morning. Barbara says, I tried the hillbilly approach, but government found me. Yeah, I mean, I feel you for sure. You know, it's tough. I mean, you try and, you know, even when you try and disassociate yourself from the system, it still has a way, you know, just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in, kind of thing, right? You know? Cindy says the KPP school board definitely split the vote, and we have Patty Truesdale again. I mean, this is the thing that killed me. I mean, with that whole race, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, the District 1 race in the Kenai, the District 1 school board race, You had Donna Anderson and you had Shelby. I've forgotten her last. Anyway, the other gal, Shelby. Both conservatives. And they split the vote between the two of them. And Truesdale's going to get in. This is the classic Republican conundrum. It is just a classic, like we cannot get out of our own way. Conservatives just can't get out of our own way. We've got to, instead of saying, well, one of us has got to be the bigger person and step down here and jump into this. What did we end up with? We ended up with Patty Truesdale because the two conservatives, decided to battle it out between the two of them. It's astonishing. Absolutely astonishing. Okay. Actually, says David, actually, it's a classic Democrat strategy. Well, if so, they're doing fantastic. Well, this is quite honestly, David's not wrong, because this is one of the reasons why they took the it's one of the reasons why they took the Republican primary and they made it so that only undeclareds and Republicans could participate in it, because this was a classic Democratic tactic, right? They'd split the vote amongst the Republicans in the primaries and try and get the weakest candidate in there. That's what would happen. Shelby Oden. Thank you, Chris. Shelby Oden was the name of the other candidate. Hey, Miguel. He's on his layover somewhere in an airport watching us. That sounds like hell. Let's sit in an airport and watch the Michael Duke Show. That sounds fantastic. All right. Let's get back to it. Here we go. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay. We are ready to go. Hour one continues, and the phone lines are open this morning. If you would love to, if you'd like to sound off, I would love to hear what you have to say this morning at 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. Come on board and be part of the conversation, and we'd love to hear what you have to say here. Let's talk a little bit here about the violation, the legislative violation. Okay. And let me tell you why I was so upset about this yesterday. Because it was more the reaction than anything else. It was this idea that somehow Kawasaki, he was disappointed because this was so political. And it had nothing to do with the fact that he had, broken the rules or anything else. It was that somebody had caught him with it, and somehow that was the problem, is that somebody then politicized it to bring it not to bring it up because it was right or wrong, but because it was a political thing, and it really didn't matter. And technology, I screwed up, and I'll make sure that I don't do it again. It wasn't like that. It's just sort of disappointing to have to be said, and that this has to be said and politicized, and then it becomes an issue in the future campaign. It was a technical violation, he said, and I think it was unfairly weaponized against us just because who we were running against. What? I mean, you got Scooter Kendall out there throwing APOC violation reports out around, like it's candy. I mean, lawfare has become a way of life for many on the left. I mean, it's quite honestly, it's one of the things that drove Sarah Palin out of office. And drove her to jump onto the national stage more than anything else, and kind of lose her mind in a lot of ways, because she was a decent governor. But again, that lawfare thing was going on. There was ethics violations all over the place that they were threatening. She wore a Arctic cat jacket to a thing that and that was somehow a governmental endorsement, and blah, 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 blah. It's just this idea that somehow there was absolutely no apology, no remorse, no, oh my gosh, we're so sorry and we shouldn't have done it, but or we'll do better next time. It was disappointing to him that this had to come out and be politicized. That they have, I mean, again, going back to the Fairbanks Borough Assembly, right? Barbara Haney writes an opinion piece in the paper. It, turns it in as a private citizen. My understanding is that when they write the bylines at the bottom that says Barbara Haney is X, Y, and Z, she hadn't even said that she was a borough assembly member. They added that, right? That, is serving on the borough assembly and also is a professor of blah, 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 blah. But they weaponized that. Now, granted, they gave her the $1 fine or whatever, and I would have fought that, and I never would have paid it either. But the whole point was, all of a sudden, the same thing happens to you, and there is no contrition or anything on this. And I'm just so tired of when politicians get called out on certain things, and there are just absolutely no consequences whatsoever. Because we're supposed to be a land of rules and laws, right? I mean, we're a constitutional republic, meaning that we have a framework. We're supposed to live by those laws, and people are supposed to trust the system. That's what we hear all the time, right? Trust the system, and it will do the right thing. That if we follow those rules and laws, it'll all be okay. And we talk often on the program about the idea of an Irish democracy, which is shorthand for basically the beginning of chaos, where people just stop paying attention to the rule of law because it's been so folded or mangled or abused to the point to where they don't trust the institutions anymore. And the bottom line is this: our entire society is built on trust in the system. Now, we could talk about it as in the financial system, when there's a run on the bank, right? That is a absolute expression of the lack of trust in the financial system, and that's how you get a crash and make Great Depression and things like that. Same thing can happen for all the other rules and laws. If they continue to either, one, make ridiculous laws that nobody believes in and that everybody basically starts to ignore, which is what happened during Prohibition, right? When they see things like that, that can lead to it. Or when they themselves are immune or ostensibly immune, the appearance of immunity from the consequences of their actions, that's also a problem. Now, what was interesting about this whole thing is that no major news media outlet, with the exception of the Alaska Beacon, pick this up. And James Brooks, I've had problems with James Brooks over the years. You know, we've talked about, but he is still one of the best reporters out there. And he's the only one that picked up on this. But even in his writing, it seems like he is kind of iffy on this whole thing. He makes sure to highlight that in the very beginning that this was a technical violation. And he goes on, but it's again still a good story. I don't want to bang on James Brooks too bad, because he at least reported on it. The final report did not name the complainant, but Leslie Hajdukovic. This was all about Kawasaki thought it was Hajdukovic. They had put it out there, but it wasn't. It was Barbara Tyndale, who was a member of the state school board. That's what that's who Hajdukovic said had filed the complaint. So she knew who it was. She confirmed that she had filed a complaint and said the ethics committee was clear. Senator Kawasaki violated Alaska ethics laws for personal political gain by using state resources, staff time, and taxpayer dollars for campaign purposes. Now, this is not a technical violation as he claims, but a serious breach of public trust from an 18-year legislator who fully understands the rules. Doing this for nearly 20 years. It is a breach of public trust. He's 100% right on that. It is a breach of is what is so disturbing to me in so many ways. And that's why I got so agitated by it, because we're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to bring to stay free, to bring the republic back, to do the right thing, to make sure that people are taken care of. And when we have our elected officials who should be held to a higher standard, treat this whole thing with disdain. Oh, it was just a technical violation, and I'm really upset that I'm disappointed that somebody would bring this up to do the. With no remorse, no mea culpa, no, I'll do better next time. It really is just. It's frustrating to see. So this is why I was so agitated yesterday, because this was all kind of coming to a head on top of all this other stuff. And I just, I was just frustrated by the whole situation. And the more I see, the more I start to realize that, we as the little people seem to be losing control of our institutions in a big way. That's how I see it. When the committee that finds that he violated the law recommends no, and it wasn't like it was going to be criminal charges, right? It was going to be censure, or something was going to happen, or, and maybe they were going to say he had to pay back it out of his campaign fund. I mean, they could have said those things. It wasn't like it was but again, no recommended. How did they put it? I want to make sure that I don't. The committee determined corrective action is not warranted in this matter. The committee reminds Senator Kawasaki that the ethics committee and staff are available to provide clarification, informal advice, or advisory opinions to prevent similar occurrences in the future. So no corrective action, just, come to us and we'll tell you whether you're doing it right. It's astonishing. It really, really is. It's astonishing and frustrating that's where we're, and that's why I was so hacked off yesterday about this. Absolutely. That's why I was so frustrated with the whole situation. So again, do I just look at the state trooper next time he pulls me over for going 65 and a 55 and say, well, technically, why are you politicizing this? Right? Is that what I say? Yeah, and again, Miguel says it in the chat room. If this had been some kind of conservative that had done this, if a Mike Shower had done this, what do you think the headlines would read like? What do you think the headlines would look like on the other side? You're kidding yourself if you think that this would have been, in the same way. It's crazy. Anyway, I wanted to take a little bit of a calmer bite at that apple because I was yesterday. Yeah, I don't know. It just things kind of built up and I got super agitated about it. I'm frustrated that people who supposedly should be held at a higher standard are instead not even slapped on the wrist, not even said, you're a bad boy, be better next time. It is, there's no corrective action. Don't worry about it. It wasn't even a slap on the wrist. It was a pat on the butt to say, keep going, champ, keep going. That's what it felt like, at least to me. All right, we got one final segment coming up. We're going to talk a little bit about this new initiative that Lieutenant Governor Dahlstrom has certified. We'll talk about that, and maybe we'll get to this whole thing. And I mean, is Anchorage? I'm going to use some hyperbole here, but is Anchorage becoming Mogadishu? God, it feels like it sometimes, right? All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. Hey, how you doing? Oh, Mike Shower's already up and about. He says, they'd have crucified me. Right. I mean, right? If this had been something that Senator Shower had done, or Shelley Hughes, or Kevin McCabe, or Sarah Vance, if they had done that, what would be the outcome? Oh, not this pat on the butt. Anyway, let me go back up here. Richie says, when you step back and look at things from an employee-employer perspective, which essentially we're involved in with as it pertains to elected officials, any of them who've been in office for 5, 10, 20 or more years and have not in that amount of time made improvements or made our lives better in any meaningful way, they need to have their butts removed from that position, period. Well, I think some would argue that those people have made their lives better, right? I mean, this is why do they keep electing Bert Stedman? Why do they keep electing Gary Stevens or Louise Stutz? People who are ostensibly Republican, but at the same time caucus with the Democrats, do all these things, spend all the state money because they feel like their lives are being improved because of the monies that are being drawn to their areas and to their districts. So maybe this is more about an educational component of educating people as to, where they're going and is getting that money. Yeah, the bacon, says John, the pork. As long as you bring home the bacon, you could do anything you want, right? It's anyway, it's going to be interesting to watch. Let's see what else. They wait a second. I just scrolled back to something. It was here. Kawasaki is disappointed he completely lied about Leslie, and that's the only reason why he won, and again used my pick on his last mailer without consent or permission from me, he said. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Michael Shower said they picked up on it. They just aren't going to report on it. They all know it's happening. And yes, James is one of just a couple of the mainstream reporters who at least tries to get more of the story and does at time add balance. I've also asked him and called him to the mat a few times on some articles. Interesting comments he made once. He sometimes gets overruled by his editors and they'll change headlines on him, which can be very misleading. I mean, that's again part of the problem as well. Actually, says Fat Ray, we're supposed to be immoral and religious people if you go by the guys who set the country up. That's true. It's not designed for people who aren't, upright and moral, for sure. I'm going to here. Brian says, law? I didn't need no stinking law. Senator Kawasaki. Maybe. Probably. Terry says, I think APOC is a big reason that people won't run for office. Yeah. And Barbara's right. It was probably not fair of me to use that as an example, although I was just saying that that was what was outrage. I mean, these same kind of people who will call Barbara and act like it's the greatest, betrayal of public trust in a decade for actually just writing an opinion piece. And here's Scott Kawasaki using public funds and staff for his campaign benefit. That's a whole different kettle of fish. But I guess what got me was the fact that they were treating her for writing an op-ed as if it was, again, a huge thing. Kevin says APOC is the problem. The APOC reporting requirements to run for school board in Alaska are exponentially higher than those required to run for president. APOC is so screwed up it's easily weaponized. Well, maybe we need to maybe there needs to be some reform there. Yeah. Chris Tuck says, David, ethics violation. Remember Chris Tuck? He was found guilty by APOC of $85,000 in violations, yet he was only fined $8,500. Jeffrey says, rules for thee and not for me. Well, oh man, I gotta say, all right, I'm coming down to it. I'm coming down to the last little bit here. All right, I think I'm all caught up for the answer. All right, let's continue. Take some calls. Open up the phone lines. Talk about this new initiative. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Okay, phone lines are open for this final segment, 319-527-3864. If you want to sound off, this is the final segment today where you can sound off on anything that I just talked about. If you want to talk about the Kawasaki thing, feel free to do it. But I mean, people in the chat room are talking about how even APOC is part of the problem with because we were talking about whether or not people would want to run for office. I mean, if you're of a certain party, I guess it's okay because you just get, like I said, you get the pat on the butt and you're, on the way out the door. But if you're of another party, they can lawfare you to death, right? Representative McCabe is in the chat room. He says APOC is the problem. The APOC reporting requirements to run for school board in Alaska are exponentially higher than those required to run for president. APOC is so screwed up, it's easily weaponized. So maybe we need to clean up APOC. I mean, after we clean up the voter rolls, and after we bring the grand jury back online, and after we right? Need a little Irish in my coffee this morning. That's what it's going to come down to. All right, well, let's go back over to, I guess, a bit of good news. There's a state ballot initiative that is set up to clarify voting eligibility, and it's been certified by the Lieutenant Governor, Nancy Dahlstrom. The measure seeks to make explicit that non-citizens cannot vote in Alaska elections. Now, that's a restriction that already exists in state law. That they can't vote. But apparently it's been, we hear this across the country. Oh, they don't vote. And then, of course, as ICE has been rounding up people, including that superintendent of schools was it Minnesota, wherever it was, that it turns out that he had been voting. And so, look, I'm just looking for some clarification. So the initiative is titled "An Act Requiring That Only United States Citizens Be Qualified to Vote in Alaska Elections." And it only does one thing. The initiative proposes one key change to the verbiage of the law, the word "only." As it stands, the statute 15.05.101 states that a person may vote at any election who, one, is a citizen of the United States. The proposed version would read, only a person who is a citizen of the United States may vote in any election. So you've got Charles Coghill, Mike Chenault, and Josh Revak have sponsored the initiative. And to file the initiative, they have got to gather 100 signatures from eligible voters before submitting it to the lieutenant governor, which they did. Then the lieutenant governor has to decide, does the ballot meet the legal requirements to move forward? And it did. She said in her press release, "Our democratic process is strengthened when Alaskans engage directly in shaping the laws that govern our state. By approving this application, we're ensuring that the people have the opportunity to consider this measure through the initiative process established by our Constitution." It's up to voters to determine the merits of the ballot initiative, and that's the way it should be. So now they're going to the signature gathering stage, and they have to gather 34,000 signatures to qualify it for a future ballot. Now, I don't think it'll be on for next year's ballot. I don't, maybe not. Depends on how strident they get and how busy they get to do it. But this is one that I would sign, right? I mean, only citizens should be able to vote on their form of government. People who are here legally, who have followed the rules and the laws, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I know we keep hearing about, well, they don't vote at all. And then yet we continue to hear about instances across the country where they do in fact vote. And I said this the other day. It was kind of shocking to me. We came down to, obviously we live in Homer now, right? And so we went to vote for the first time in our new area down here. And we went down there, and my wife was ahead of me, and sneaky little minx, she whips out her voter registration card as a form of ID and hands it to the lady. And she gets her thing and goes in, and I asked her after we got done, I was using my driver's license. I said, did you show picture ID? She goes, no picture ID, just the voter card. Now, I guess that's an acceptable form of voter. I don't know if there's people out there who are making fake voter ID cards. I mean, you'd have to know quite a bit about the people and the person, but it was just one of those things where I'm like, I was shocked that she didn't have to show ID showing who she was. Like, this is me, right? Picture ID. And so I'm okay with this. I'm okay with only citizens voting in elections. I don't have a problem with that personally. All right, let's go over to the phones. Miguel is on the line. Miguel, my friend, what's on your mind? Miguel? Oh,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I just want to say hi on the way to Hawaii. Yeah, and I agree with you. Citizens should be the only ones allowed to vote in our elections.
Yeah.
Sadly, our borough assembly, just the majority, we know who those are, voted to send a letter to our congressman for an immigrant who broke the law to try to get her out of jail. I mean, we have compassion, but you spit on those who do things by the law in the correct way. And I didn't know if you heard about that, Mike, or not, but
I didn't. Can you speak up a little bit, Miguel? Speak up a little louder. You're pretty quiet out there, and we got some background noise from the airport there. You said there was.
I don't know if you heard what went on in the Borough Assembly not too long ago. Scott, I think it was Scott Krause. He puts a resolution forth for the Borough Assembly to send a letter to our congressman to ask him to get a lady out of jail for violating immigration laws, and she already had tried to request PFD when she wasn't a citizen either and got caught. So of course that majority voted yes to try to get her out of the detention center in Washington, and I testified against this. And my father came here legally, and he knew if he did something illegal, what would happen. So, that woman had been in this country for over 3 decades. So, I mean,
yeah, she had a chance. She had a chance to do it right, and filing for the PFD illegally definitely not making you a popular amongst the home team as well. But yeah, this is the thing. We're rewarding bad behavior. We're rewarding. I mean, it's the Kawasaki thing. We're rewarding illegal behavior.
Yeah, but yet when you and your family go to another country, you're expected to follow that country's rules and laws of immigration and visas and all that. But you're saying you can come to our country and break the law? No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
So it's not that I don't have a heart of compassion, but I know what my dad had to do to get to where he was at and become a citizen and all that. So for all those people that are doing it the right way, it was like a spit on, in my opinion, it was like a spit on their face. Yeah, and the whole ethics thing with Kawasaki, wow. It's rules for thee and not for me, like everybody's saying.
Yeah, no, exactly. It is one rule for thee and another for me. All right, Miguel, thank you for calling in. I appreciate you being part of it today. Folks, we are out of time. We got more coming up. Hour 2 is dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. All right, we were right up against the top of the hour break here. And so now we're going to, I don't know why it was so quiet. Miguel was quiet. Hillbilly was a little quiet, but Miguel was even quieter. I don't know why. I just, well, I know why. I do know why. It's because I got this brand new computer here. I got to do something with it. Got to swap it out. I've been fighting it. All right, let's all right, let's get things squared away here. I'm going to call Senator Shower, see what he has to say, see if we can get him on the phone. I know he's awake this time.
Yeah,
you're awake. My God, you actually answered.
I'm awake. I'm awake, and I've answered stuff online. It's amazing.
I know. It is amazing. I was a little concerned last time. All right. Well, boy, did I set up some great stuff for you to talk about this morning as Lieutenant Governor, including the initiatives. Let's see, the ethics violations, the discussions. I mean, we got all kinds of things we could talk about. How you been, my friend?
Good. I was sick for like over 3 weeks. That's part of what wiped me out a little bit ago when I was supposed to be on your show. I was out.
Yeah,
but better. Good. Came back to got better. Very next day, FedEx goes, "Oh, you haven't been working. Here's an 8-day trip to Asia." So, and then I just got back from that like 2 days ago. So it's been a busy month in a way.
Yeah, no, that's good, right? I mean, that's what you're supposed to stay busy, stay informed, stay true. I mean, that's what you got. You got stuff and things. You got stuff and things to get done. So I'm glad that you're feeling better, and I'm glad everything's back up and running. Summer been treating you okay?
It was just busy, my friend. As you know, we had such great weather by and large, and it was just really, yard work and the gardening stuff. And then of course, working at FedEx, there was a little bit of legislative stuff, and now starting to ramp up stuff for a different run for office. So it's like, as soon as you were saying something on the radio a minute ago, but it was like this vortex, right? This singularity, the black hole. I'm on the event horizon. Just when I think I've reached escape velocity, I can get my life back, because I'm sucked right back in again. I'm like, doggone it.
Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. That's right.
Pull me back in.
That's right.
Oh, busy.
Yeah, it's good. Well, we're going to jump into this here in just a second. Let me get squared away here with the chat room here before we get too far along. So hang out there. Don't eat all my donuts and stuff. Gordon says, need some mustache wax. Yeah, I didn't wax my mustache this morning. I don't wax it every morning, but yeah, it's sometimes it fights me. Sometimes it fights me a little bit, but we'll see. Thanks for noticing though, Gordon. Yeah, thanks for noticing. Melissa says, rules for thee and not for me is why I feel like the Fairbanks elections went the other way. The left doesn't want to follow the rules. They want what they want, however they can make it happen. Well, that's, it's all good. Miguel, I don't think that was your problem. I think that was more of a me problem than a you problem for being such on a low volume. I tried pumping you up, but it is what it is. So it's good. Jeremy says, I was wondering if Senator Mike Shower would have to retire from FedEx to become lieutenant governor. I don't know. We'll ask him that question. And he basically, Melissa says, is this why my FedEx packages were late? Because of showers? I see what you said. I see what you did there. Let's see. Did anyone else get a thrill when the governor announced he was going to reduce regulations by 25% by the year 2027? Will he still be in office? Well, I mean, technically he'll be in office until what? Is it January? No, it's the end of 2026, right? Because the election happens and then the new governor's got to have a budget out like right away. So, yeah. All right. Let's see. Some clown from Minnesota was called to testify recently, and he was saying essentially they hand out driver's licenses to everybody that wanders in, illegals, and of course, all that is required to vote in Minnesota is photo ID. Well, I mean, here they've got a voter roll, so I don't know. It's again, maybe this is something we need to dive into with Shower here to get the full run up for sure. I've showed my voter ID before. Okay. You could still use a hunting and fishing license, which you can get it with no identification at Walmart, said Mike Shower. Jesus. Sorry, Lord. I just you could use a hunting and fishing license, requires no identification. Anyway, let's see. Nancy, ICE rounded up someone in Fairbanks too. She broke the law, got caught, and the majority of our borough assembly voted to send a letter to ask our congressman to get her out of jail. Basically spitting on those that do things by the law and the correct way. I mean, I know, right? And the fact that it turns out that you said if it turns out that she had filed for a PFD on top of that, all right. After we fix deferred maintenance, after we fix deferred maintenance, I mean, we got so much stuff to fix in this state. And we got so much stuff to fix in this state. Is it going to, I don't know. We'll see. All right, here we go. Jumping back into it. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
Sounds just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the interwebs at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Hour 2 of the Big Radio Show for this Wednesday hump day. Middle of the week, downhill slide. Firearms Friday's coming up, and I think Jacob Sellum's going to be on to talk about his new book, which I've got to finish reading this week before we get him on. Oh man, I got so much homework to do. All right, let's get to it though, and get things going. Hour 2 of the show today, we're being joined by none other than State Senator Mike Shower for what we lovingly call the Shower Hour of Power. Now, State Senator Shower from District O is also a brand spanking new candidate for Lieutenant Governor. And he joins us this morning to discuss all of this and more. Let's welcome him to the program right now. Good morning, sir. How are you today?
I am fine, my friend. I'm on cup of coffee number 2, so I'm much more awake. I feel all right.
Much more awake. I feel so much better now that it's all better than last week for sure, because last week you were I was afraid you were sleeping with the fishes or something. Turns out you were just sleeping with a head cold. So anyway, it's good to have you back, and thank you for coming on board. Mike, we've been covering a lot of stuff this morning, and I don't know if you want to sound off on any of that stuff, but I thought I'd give you the opportunity because hey, why not? It's we've got a new initiative. We've got the whole thing with the ethics thing with Kawasaki, et cetera. And so let's take the topical things to begin with here and see what you have to say. What say you this morning?
Well, I'll tell you what. I did comment somewhere a couple times on the ethics violation, because I mean they're confirming that he violated the ethics law basically, and my comments have been pretty generic in this sense. If you look at it, unless you're conservative, which you were kind of joking about in the last hour, and I made that comment, yeah, if I had done this, oh boy, they'd probably have me in the Leavenworth right now in high max security. But as a little bit joking, but not entirely, this is the essence of the fox guarding the hen house here. Because if you have legislators, especially when they're almost all in the same coalition together, and they're all generally aligned, good luck getting those people to basically take out one of their own, because what happens when they're up, right? They don't want to be the one voting against another legislator because, well, then what if I get accused of something or caught doing something? In other words, what we have here is circling the wagons and defending ourselves against any and all accusations, minus something that would get like felonious, right? I mean, if it was a real crime of moral turpitude, this is what you would find happen. It's kind of what happened to Biden. It'd be he's sharp as a tack. He's as good as he's ever been. It's great. And as soon as he's kind of out on the outs, I predicted this after the debate with Trump. They're going to turn on him so fast. He's going to be a nobody. And the next thing you know, he was terrible. He's got dementia. People ditched him. That's what happens, Michael. So you're either on the inside and you're going to be protected by those on the inside in the system, or once you're on the outside, like if you committed a real crime, they're going to be like, who was that? I don't know that person. I never really liked him anyway. So that's kind of the game. I mean, I hate to say it's a game, but folks, everybody on this radio pays attention. It's the fox guarding the hen house. You're never going to get legislators, in my opinion, to really turn on one of their own in cases like this, unless you're somebody that's kind of on the outside, a minority member maybe people that have been shunned, or they're a little too hardcore. Maybe they're too conservative. Wink, wink. Right? Oh, well, we have no problem taking them out. So that's what I have seen. And even then, Michael, when there's been people that are more conservative that have complaints against them, still generally, you saw this, nothing really happens. And you mentioned APOC, or somebody did. I know Kevin McCabe and I have talked about it. I've talked about it with a number of legislators. I think most legislators like to get rid of it. I think most people like to get rid of it because it has become an impediment. It's become a weapon. Talk about the weaponization, and I'm watching the left be so upset about weaponization under Trump. I'm like, no, you guys started this. You started this back in Obama. You accelerated to hyperspeed under Biden, and you wonder why we're seeing this now, and we're immune to it. We're like, well, you guys did this for years. Why wouldn't we fire back and try to, go after people that have actually broken the law? So it's an across the board thing. But to summarize it, it's going to be really hard, in my opinion, to get the system to go after itself, right? Because people that are there are part of the system, and I've seen it with my own eyes. I've watched it, and people get a slap on the wrist at best, if anything, and then nothing happens. And so now your audience and every other citizen's going, well, great. We can't even hold somebody accountable if they violate the law.
Right.
And what happens and you were saying that, right? Oh, I get pulled over or something happens to me. I'm expected to live within the law and suffer the consequences. But you look at your leaders and they don't. That's that two-tier justice system people worry about.
Right.
And it's real. We all know it's real. All right. That's one thing on that one. I'm not a fan of it.
I think it raises the bigger question of who's watching the watchers, right? We're supposed to have accountability. We're supposed to be a nation that has a rule of law, and who's watching it's one of the reasons why I have been against, in some instances, the weaponization on the side of the right. I mean, just because they did it doesn't mean that we should, because again, who's watching the watchers, and does that accelerate us towards that idea of again, the Irish democracy thing, where people start to have disdain for the rule of law because it's basically being ignored.
I agree with that, and I would support either side if they were actually enforcing the laws as written, or the Constitution, and they were holding people accountable to that. It wouldn't matter to me which side was doing it if it was legitimate. If it's being weaponized as a political instrument, which we both know it is, then I'm going to stand against that, regardless of which side does it.
Right.
I have no problem with somebody being held accountable, tossed in jail, kicked out of office, whatever it may be, if they're violating the law, regardless of what's before their name, RDU, I don't care. And that's the way we all should be acting, right? And that's the way our elected leaders should be acting. If you violated the law, you suffer the consequence, period. And it doesn't matter if you did or didn't. For weaponizing it, you yourself should probably get in trouble for doing that, because you're probably violating the law. Hence everything that Obama did when you look back at the Russiagate and the hoax. And I told you before, I've told you on this program, in 2018, I had a good friend. I won't go through the whole story, but he sat on my deck out here. He had just finished running the Russiagate, now as we know, hoax, for 1 year, the House Intelligence Committee. He worked for the chairman, and he ran that, and he sat right on my deck in 2018 and said, Mike, this was a coup. He had access to everything. He ran the investigation. It's been out there for years, but they don't report on it until they have no choice. So
right.
Of course, citizenry doesn't trust what's happening, and honestly, it's hard to when you see how the game is being played.
Right.
So anyway, I will say this. One last point to that is, that I have been hardcore about this for years, including Kelly Shabak, and I tried to do this back starting in 2019. I believe we should have an elected IG or an elected AG, because then you can write, just like the military has the IG. I believe you need that inspector general or that attorney general elected, so it doesn't work for the governor outside of that process, that has the charter, the authority, the funding to go after fraud, waste, abuse, corruption. If you don't have that, you have no other mechanism in this state to look at those kinds of things. Because if it works for the governor, they're like, well, I can't really do that because the governor won't let me, or the governor might fire me. So you have that political pressure to do, things that maybe you shouldn't do, and vice versa. Unless you have something just like a sheriff, Michael, that works for the people directly, that can be elected and unelected by the people, that's a problem. And even that can be a problem, right? If you get a bad IG, I get it. But what else do we have?
Right.
We don't have anybody with the authority to watch the watchers, to investigate and prosecute people that are doing bad things. It doesn't exist in this state. It doesn't.
We need an inspector general's office in this state. We had the state ombudsman did some of that kind of work, but that was marginalized and pushed out anyway. We need an inspector general in this state, and not a political one, like you said, an elected one.
That's right. Elected by the people, doesn't work for anybody else in the system. Who's the ombudsman's work for?
Yeah, exactly. Works for the administration, and that's
right.
That's part of the problem. Yeah, that's why I think the ombudsman has been kind of marginalized over the years, because again, there you can't. Who's watching the watchers? That I think we need it. We need an inspector general. All right. I'm sorry, Mike. I interrupted your thought there, but I really wanted to point that out, that we're supposed to be a nation that has a rule of law. We're supposed to respect it. We're supposed to trust the system. But how can we trust the system when the watchers who are they're watching themselves, essentially? It's like the fox has been put in charge of the hen house.
Well, I'll tell you this, my friend, and I'm not going to give away all those secrets, but if Bernadette and I are successful and end up in office next November, I have ideas. And we'll get to those. But I have
ideas. I have ideas. And somebody, you can hear the sphincter slamming shut in Juneau from here. All right. Let's. What else were we going to talk about here that was on the hot ticket for that? Oh, the initiative. This initiative sounds like a pretty good idea. I mean, John Coghill, Josh Revak, Mike Chenault. Not necessarily the what I would consider to be the most conservative group of folks, but I think ideally to make that clear based on the language of what I've read so far makes sense to me.
Well, I'll tell you, it does. I made a comment earlier on your Facebook one, and I said on the surface it sounds good. Devil can be in the details, right? So I knew I would need to read it and do a little checking against statutes and make sure I know exactly what it does. It might be okay. The names you mentioned, like I said, at least two of the three give me pause, because I'm always concerned, depending on what they are, because one of those was I served alongside of two of them. And, you got to remember, like, one of them helped bring SB 91 on board, and that was a disaster. The other one turned out to be, I don't want to sit here and start blasting people, but problematic and a lot of, we'll just say issues. So I have concerns when I see the names of certain people and what are they up to and what does it mean? It doesn't mean it's not a good initiative. It might be okay. When I see certain names associated with things, I'm going to take a deeper dive on that and make sure that another fast one's not being pulled, on the Alaskan people, because I've had enough of ruling via fiat, via initiatives, and that's how we seem to legislate in the state anymore, is by doing initiatives. I'm all about doing good ones.
We do that.
But I just got to look at it.
Well, we do that because the legislature can't get anything done that's not super or hyper partisan. That's part of the problem. That's why, average people, that's part of the reason. The other reason is, of course, is that people have figured out on the outside that Alaska is a cheap date and they can sway the populace by dumping millions of dollars into a small area and really make it work. That's how we ended up with ranked choice voting.
You're right. I agree with you on both premises. The first one is the legislature can be impotent and we do very little that's good, in my opinion, or if we do pass something big, it tends to almost always be bad. I'm referring to the second part of that, which is we get run over in this state by lower 48 interest running these initiatives like ranked choice voting, because they know if they did the same thing in California, it'd cost them $800 million. They can get away with it for $15 million up here and then use us as a springboard to the rest of them. They say, look, Alaska has it. It's great.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where my concern is, on us getting run over by the initiative process.
That's true. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword for sure. All right. Well, we're coming up on the break, and so we'll take that now, and we'll come back here in just a second. State Senator Mike Shower is our guest. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We will return in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Back with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're in the break right now, and we're continuing. A couple comments in the chat room. This is there. This is Harold. Why bother with any elected anything while folks are being dragged off the street without any due process? Folks, do you mean people who have entered the country illegally, who have already broke the law, Harold, and who aren't U.S. citizens? To which Anthony, by the way, says, if you're an illegal immigrant, your due process is deportation to the nearest port of entry, then back to your home country. Afterwards, your case will be assessed by a court and a verdict judgment made. That is to say, your due process under the umbrella of constitutional law does not include you staying in the U.S. or even being present for the process. I mean, it's ridiculous that somebody,
What due process?
Yeah.
What due process do you have as an American if you go to Russia or China or Venezuela or North Korea? Tell me what due process other countries afford you if you cross their borders illegally and then demand different things. The reality is people need to stop using words that don't mean what they think they mean, because you don't have due process per se unless you're a U.S. citizen. Everybody else has a different process, so-called, and we need to start using that right. And I think you and I both, and plenty of your listeners, are sick and tired of watching the words be misapplied for the narrative. That's not due process. You and I have due process. We're American citizens. They are not. It is different.
If I see one more Facebook reel or something that says something about people being kidnapped on the street, I'm like, they're not being kidnapped. They're being deported. There's difference. It's a difference right there. They're being deported. They're not being kidnapped. They're being deported. That's what's happening. Brian, it does have a good piece of it. He goes, he did say, but the ranked choice initiatives in the lower 48 went down spectacularly in the lower 48 last election, despite Alaska being held up as an example. And I would say you're 100% right, and I'm glad that they didn't fall for it. And I think they can see it because Alaska is struggling. We continue to try and fight back against this ranked choice voting thing. And it did. It went down in fact, in some states, they actually went far enough, so far as to make it illegal, Mike.
Yeah, to ban it. That's right. And that's an important note, Brian. And as we talk about that, part of the reason, at least a part of the reason, is us in Alaska, people like Phil and others that were working on this initiative have been going all over the country. Michelle and I have done it in various states, talking to legislators at conferences. I stood up in front of the entire conference at the conservative legislator once with the Tim and Dave Barton crowd, Glenn Beck, all them. I got to stand up and talk about the how bad ranked choice voting was. And there was 150, 200 legislators from across the country. And I've testified to committees in other states that have called, as have many other people doing that from Alaska. So my point is, at least a part of the ability of those states to defeat this is because Alaskans are taking it upon themselves to go out to those other places and show them how bad it is. So we are on the offense in the lower 48. And at least they have some armor, right? Some ammunition, because we've been giving it to them, going, don't do it. It's bad. Here, let me show you why. And we've had the ability to do that. Alaska got freaking hit out of the blue on this one. Everybody's like, what? Whoa, ooh, too late. Plus, like we said, we're a cheap date. You can spend $15 million here and outspend us with lower 48 billionaire money by 100 to 1, and we get crushed, where the other states, they can't do that. So there's multiple factors here. But I hear what Brian is saying, and it is important to note that we have been on the offense in the lower 48, giving them help to explain why. And that's at least a part of the reason they're able to defeat it, because they see it coming. They know it's happening. They get their forces lined up. They get their money and their resources ready, and they fight back and they stop it. We are trying to undo something already done, which is a much harder problem.
Yeah, exactly. Although I do have hope that this next go around, we will have enough horsepower to be able to reverse that. That would be pretty amazing to see.
Like, that will change the landscape here, because it's really going to be important for the next election cycle, right? And it's also going to be very important. You can't forget this. Whoever the governor is, hopefully a very solid team, is going to matter on the organization of the House and the Senate in the state, right?
Yep.
And so far, Republicans have been able to join with Democrats with virtually no consequences under ranked choice voting. If ranked choice voting fails next November, in other words, we get rid of it, repeal it, all of a sudden those Republicans that have been joining with no consequence are going to be staring at primaries where they're going to get kicked out of office.
Yeah, I can't wait.
It's going to drive.
It's
going to make it.
Yep, I 100% agree, and I look forward to it. All right, Mike Showers, our guest, the Michael Duke Show. Please like and share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's do this thing. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, we are continuing. Now. State Senator Mike Shower. And we're going to continue our discussion. Let's get on to more of the big picture stuff, and that is the office of the lieutenant governor. Now, we often talk about this. Lieutenant governors are, they're usually in the background. They have very, very few actual duties, but you have some plans. You have some horsepower here. You have some things that you've been wanting to talk about as a senator that you've been working on that fold neatly into what the offices of the lieutenant governor have control over and the purview over. So let's talk a little bit about your decision to run for lieutenant governor. I mean, we've been joking on this program for the last 2 years that you need to run for governor, and your wife threatened to kill me in my sleep at one point if I continue to bring that up. And yet here you come out as lieutenant governor. Tell me what's going on.
Well, I'll tell you, Michelle and I have been talking for some time, and even through last year, the session was so tough. And I mean tough, not in the sense of like, oh, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. No, it's not like that. I mean tough in the sense of emotionally, on the family, on continuing to be shoved into a minority by certain people that should, be joining with us. And instead we get back into a minority again and again. And you're like, why am I beating my head against the wall, right? So why do I want to go back to the legislature where certain people are going to use me as an excuse to allow them to be able to go over, especially the ranked choice voting, and join with Democrats? And I'm the problem, but that's what's been happening. Oh, we can't work with that guy, or we can't work with that, gal. And I'm sitting there going, first of all, I'm going to laugh and go, well, if that reason's taken away, if we're not there anymore, what's your excuse now going to be for joining the Democrats, right? That's part of it. But for us, we're like, this is just getting frustrating to go there and try to want to represent your district well, try to adhere to Republican principles and policies and sanity, like a fiscal policy working group, an actual sustainable, stable solution. And it doesn't even make, see the first committee hearing. And I go, well, you know what? Banging my head against that wall, we get one ride, on this planet, Mike. Well, and I want to make a difference, and I want to leave something better for our kids and our grandkids. That's why Michelle and I are doing this. You and I have talked about this many times. I want to leave them something better than what I inherited, not something worse. So we want to serve, but going back to the legislature just didn't make sense. So we were probably going to be out the door after this term was up anyways. And we said, is there anything else that we would be interested in doing? And we're not interested in going to DC because, we get asked, go be a U.S. Senator or whatever. I'm like, nah, not really interested in that. And even governor is one of those things. I'm like, I don't feel like it's the right time or the right placement for me with everything that's taking place right now. It just doesn't, right? But as Michelle and I discussed it last year before we got into this session and then made our decision, it was probably time for us to move on. If there was one thing that we would do out of all the different options out there that would keep us in the political realm of serving, the lieutenant governor had appeal for us. Why? Not stuck in Juneau, right? 4 months out of the year, not banging my head against the wall with the legislature and getting completely shoved into the corner every time by colleagues. And, oh, by the way, the one thing I've been most passionate about, the one thing I've worked the hardest on and know more about than anybody else in that building is elections. What happens to fall under the purview of the lieutenant governor? Constitutionally, elections. Many things can be done in policy and regulation. I've said that repeatedly. I've watched that those things have not been done, even when I've handed those things on a silver platter to certain people. So I'm looking at it and going, that would appeal to me, and it puts me in the right place. And by the way, with many discussions with Bernadette, she's like, get it done, go do it, don't care, it's your, make it happen. Then we've also discussed like a mini Dodge department I could be in charge of going and looking at different things we can do to try to reduce the budget. There's just different things we have that are options that I might have ideas on. There are other things, and I'm not going to go say everything, we talked about. I'm just saying there's ideas, Michael, like you said, that most of the time lieutenant governors tend to be like non-existent. You don't hear about them. They're in the shadows. I think you know me well enough at this point, and your audience does. That's probably not the type of lieutenant governor I'm going to be. So, probably a little more active and a little bit more visible. I would imagine more like, say a JD Vance type, where you're actually seeing me out there doing things with a lot of different ideas in action, because that, to me, is a part of that appeal, not just the election part of it, but that Michelle and I would be able to go out and be on the executive side where you have authority to do things, and I don't have to run it through 59 other people that are going to stop every single thing you try to do. And that lines up with my experience better anyways. I mean, I was an executive guy, right? I mean, operations officer, commander, the military, all that different stuff is more suited to my background anyways, on being able to run that administrative side of things. So, and I have 8 years of knowing the inside baseball down there. I know the personalities, who does what, the budgets, how it operates together. I bring all that to the table. And so ultimately, all of those things said, Michael, to go, that was kind of what tripped Michelle and I over the edge. Bernadette asked us at almost the beginning of the year, so we've known about this for some time, but had to keep it quiet because we agreed to say nothing until the announcement was made. So that was kind of one of those things that's really hard to not say anything when you know about it for a long time, but the decision had to be made a long time ago based on timeline. So, and I'll say this, we had some really good conversations, a lot of prayer behind closed doors, talking about it in different policies and things. So ultimately we made that decision that we felt like it was the right place for us to be and to go in that direction. And so that's basically why we made the decision. Well, and now we're off to the race.
And again, I don't want you to, it's like you don't want to put all your cards on the table to begin with, because you don't want them trying to block things or beat you up on things. But you had some things in the legislature that were dealing with elections. Let's go over some of the things that you wanted to change in while you're in the legislature that had to do with elections, including in voter integrity, cleaning up the rolls. I mean, you had some things there that you wanted to make happen, and we're working with others across the aisle to try and make happen.
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing, Michael, I mean, if you're gonna, there's probably to everybody their number one thing, but one of the biggest acknowledged problems we know about, and nobody can argue because it's right there in front of everybody's face with facts and data backed up repeatedly every year, is the voter rolls. We know our voter rolls are overinflated. We know they're not cleaned up where they need to be. It strangely happens when we get close to election season sometimes, but I'll just leave that where it is. And it's one of those things where I'm looking and going, we know it's overinflated. We know there's multiple things we can do. I'll tell you one of the things we'll do right from the get-go. Eric is gone. I'm sick and tired of us sitting in that system that's funded by George Soros and we have no oversight. Done. The Dominion voting machines. I want to see open source machines. I talked about it. If we're going to have machines at all, because I know a lot of people want to go to hand count, that's an option, something we might want to look at. The Matsu's been looking, or has done that, to give us a pilot program. So we may investigate that and see what are the options. Can we afford it? Can we do it? If we're going to have machines at all, I want open source. I'm not going to have something that we can't look at and proprietary to a company for our votes, for our election system. That's too important. But voter rolls is the first and primary place to clean up, because we can't have another election where a lieutenant governor decides to unilaterally send out over 600,000 ballot applications to everybody, knowing that maybe we at best had 478,000 people that could even be eligible.
Right.
Well, how many ballots floated around to who knows where? We need to be investigating people. Are they actually alive? Not just looking and seeing, well, they're on the roll, so it's good. Well, are they alive? Are they in a different state? Are they registered in another state? There's a dozen systems we've looked at that are state government systems, not private sector entities, government systems like DMV and others that we can link to, tried to set up, but never got it through in legislation. But there's ways you can do, and this is the point, Michael, there's things you can do outside of legislation. I was trying to do it from that perspective because then I can force the administration, right, to do that if you put it in legislation. But a lot of these things we discovered, when you look at the statutes, they're not required to have legislation to do it. They just didn't do it. So I had one option, right? If the administration is not going to do it, I got to pass legislation to force it to happen. Well, if I'm in the administration, I don't have to do that, right? So this is the point of many things like voter roll cleanup. What are we going to do about the machines? What about hand counting? What about investigating? How about a CSU type unit with the troopers, or another unit set up almost like that independent IG thing, where you have a unit that's specifically trained, 2, 3, 4 officers, and that's their job.
Right.
And they know what to do with election law, and they can go run these things to ground, and they can run down cybercrime with election. They can run down these data hacks. They can run down the thousands or tens of thousands of people that maybe shouldn't be on the rolls. We don't do any of that really currently. And we need that with a lieutenant governor who's going to then empower and be working with the director of the Division of Elections to make these things happen.
Right.
And so that's just a smattering of, I mean, if you want to get into the bills we've had 31 pages of different things. But those are some of the top level things as we get into, and that's where we got to be careful, because we were really close on this last election or this last session. You remember that, where that bill turned into a very left-wing bill. All the stuff we wanted on the right was stripped out. It had all the left-wing stuff like same-day registration and all that stuff going on. And the voter roll cleanup was kind of in there, but then it had all that left-wing stuff. And we're like, no. We were able to stop it out there. And then Senator Wielechowski got nervous because it was going to be stopped. And so he stripped all that stuff out in the last 2 days. But then it was such a mess in the House at that point. Everybody was so confused. We just stop. It's not going to, this far. Your points are all valid. I have been trying. There's a lot of things we can do. And I'm not going to, as you said, I'm not about to go put everything out there that I may be thinking of on the different things. But there's a bunch.
And just for folks' clarification, somebody just asked in the chat room about ERIC. You're saying getting out of ERIC, which is the Electronic Registration Information Center. Tell me what that is and why it's it's a bad thing to begin with. Because ostensibly, this was supposedly about improving electoral integrity, but it's become something more.
Well, let's start off with the fact who funds it, right? Because always follow the money, and that's very important. It's funded essentially by George Soros. There's a few other methods in there, but he's one of the primary. Anybody that's on the center or right of the spectrum politically understands that George Soros, he is a left-wing, progressive, hardcore type communist. I mean, he's a bad dude, right? On that side of the aisle. And he funds so many things like this, including now his son taking over and others like that, billionaire types, right? So funded, follow the money. Funded by people that, not necessarily have the best interests of America or Americans at heart. Second thing that's troublesome to me is I found out ERIC has no oversight. We don't have any legislative or even really administrative oversight into it. One person, usually the Director of Division of Elections, sits on the board of the states, and that's it, that one person. No reporting requirements, nothing else. We're like, well, what the heck's going on? What are they talking about? What are they doing? We don't know. Not really a good thing, right? It's not all that expensive. By comparison, I think it's like $25,000 or $30,000 a year for us to be a part of it. But again, who's funding it? What's their goal? What's the oversight we have with it? And another thing that's more practical about it, it used to have about half the country. Now it's down to like 23 or 24 states left in it. But if you look at the states, it's only like just over 100 million people. So practically less than a third of the nation is even on that database. Why would we be doing that with a private sector entity as a state when we can start looking at other states and setting up systems where we're looking at the death registry, at the tax registry, at DMV, at all these other things that are government controlled databases that at least we have oversight and we can talk to them across the nation, and all the other states have that. So there's multiple reasons why we don't want to do this. And then you look at some of the stuff ERIC is doing, pushing to have 16-year-olds registered, for example, because they want 16-year-olds to vote. They want national popular vote. They want to get rid of the Electoral College. Start looking into their background and who they are and who they're tied with. It's all left-wing stuff, Michael. So I've heard some excuses. Well, it gives us something. I'm like, no, there's other things we can do. We're just not doing it. Well, we can use it for background investigations, if there's some crime. Well, first of all, we're not really doing that. We have no troopers trained to do that. We have no unit taking care of it. So that's kind of a meaningless excuse to me for doing it. And there's all these other things we could be doing that would actually be effective. So I know that's a long explanation because, again, ERIC, I've got years of looking into this, but ERIC needs to go away and we need to kill it. And I'll tell you right now, if I was elected lieutenant governor on day one, ERIC's gone. We're done with that. And there's a host of other things that are coming down the pike too. But again, like I said, I'm not going to be too specific necessarily. So
yeah. Mike Shower is our guest, and that's a good place to leave it for the moment. We're going to come back here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We continue with State Senator Mike Shower joining us for the Shower Hour of Power. Also, of course, the newly minted lieutenant gubernatorial candidate. We'll continue here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of YouTubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we are in the break. State Senator Mike Shower, our guest. We're ready to continue here on the program. Sorry, I'm just looking at something here that should have. Okay. Let's continue on going back to the candidacy or to the questions in the chat room here. David says, thanks for the Eric explanation. David says, Mike, how about vote by mail only, such as in Anchorage? What are the thoughts on that? I mean, again, this is before I let Mike loose on it. I would just say I saw firsthand how that vote by mail, that there is no security. There is no ballot security. I walked into a post office in Anchorage during one of the elections, and, the sorting tables that they have out where the public boxes are, where you could sort your mail and do whatever. There was a half a dozen ballots just laying out on the table where somebody had gotten a ballot in their mailbox, and instead of turning it back in or destroying it or throwing it in the trash, they just left it sitting there. There's just ballots laying around to do it. There is no security. I am very nervous about a mail-in type voting system. I think it is ripe for corruption and abuse. Mike?
So first of all, mail-in balloting, no, absolutely not. I'm not a fan of mail-in voting. En masse across the entire state. There is potential for fraud, right? I've always been careful on the language because you get hit by that, and the press will say, he says there's fraud. I never said that. What I said was there's a potential for fraud. They do it to me all the time. So we already have mail voting if you choose, and it's called absentee. And you can do that in the state for virtually anything. So if you want to do absentee, you can simply request the absentee application, get it, you can turn it in, and you can do your ballot that way. If you want to do it another way, you can go online and print out a ballot and mail it in. We already have multiple ways for people to do that if they so choose, but forcing it on an electorate, no way. Because, by the way, most people, and including most people on the right side of the political spectrum, those that actually show up and vote, they want to go vote in person. They want to sit with somebody, they want to show them their ID card or their voter registration, whatever it is, and they want to see their name on the list, and they want to go hold that paper ballot in hand, take a picture of it if they want, because a lot of people do, put it in and watch it go through the machine and get the little thing. They want to do that. Why you would ever take that away from a citizen is beyond me, and not allowing it. So if you want to do, vote by mail, you already have that option. Why would we change that to something that forces it on citizens that don't want it, by the way? And if we were going to go one way or the other, Michael, I would go the other direction. If you want to go that, let's do what other countries are doing, where you force everybody to vote on one day, and everybody goes in and puts their thumbprint and ink on that, and they show up and they make it happen in one day. And I'm not saying I'd get rid of early voting, because there's people that need it and like it, especially, in places that get busy. I understand all that early voting, like it in early or in-person stations. But my point is, if I was going to say lean one way or the other, I'm leaning away. But then that's an issue, right? Look at Alaska, we're unique. How do you get that in many of the villages where you can't even get a volunteer or somebody paid to show up and do it? It's tough for them. So you're going to have options in this state, because there's a lot of people, 20% of the population or so doesn't even live in the road system. So you have to account for some of that and give them options. But somebody's looking at me good, let's go all to mail out voting. Nope, absolutely hard no. And I lean in the other direction, because I think a lot of people want the vote in person, and I think they should have that option. Anchorage, as you talked about, Anchorage trying to get rid of it. They were down to what, I think 3 in-person election sites for a city of almost 300,000 last election cycle. They want it gone. They want to be California. They want to be Oregon. They want to be Washington. They want to go to all mail-in balloting. And like you said, to me, the downside, one of the downsides is it does increase the potential for fraud, because you can have and let me just say it right now, all the data, and they love this when I do it every time, that's sarcasm, all the data for many of Alaskans' voter information has been sold on the dark web already. You can go right now and get that information. You can look and see who didn't vote last time. You can request a ballot in their name. You've got all the markers in that, the data hacks that were out there, the data breaches. You could turn in somebody's ballot for them. They would never know because nobody gets contacted. Their vote would count. They would have no idea. And it absolutely can happen. I've got that on the record multiple times in committee that could happen. I'm not saying it does. I'm saying it could. If you go to all mail-in balloting, it gets even worse because you're increasing that problem exponentially. Why would you do that? What's your goal if that's what you're trying to do? I could never agree to that. Long explanation, but it's an important one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it is important. Again, all I had to do is remember back to, like I said, walking into a post office and seeing all those ballots laying on the table. And to me, that's just like, I mean, this is important stuff. And there should be security surrounding those ballots. I mean, they give me a hard time if I try and take my ballot out of the sleeve to put it in the machine because the machine keeps trying to eat the sleeve. And they're like, oh, no, leave it in the, I mean, but they're laying ballots out on the table. I mean, how does that make sense? Absolutely. All right. We're 10 seconds out. State Senator Mike Shower, our guest. Please like and share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTube stuff and everything else. Let's get more people involved in this conversation. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
All right. We're back. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Frank says, what did you do with all those ballots you found on the post office? I shuffled them into the trash. That's what I did. All right. Mike Shower is our guest. One final segment here for today for the Shower Hour of Power. All right, Mike, team Wilson Shower. All right. So we're talking about your run here for the governor's mansion with Bernadette Wilson. Dude, this is not of all the times you could have chosen to pick and run for this is going to be the ugly one. And I know that the lieutenant governor doesn't have a lot of pull when it comes to budgets and things like that. But I would hope that as we look at this and we look at the fact that we're potentially going to be $2 billion underwater coming into the 26, 27, 27, 28 budgetary cycles. What's your thought? What is going on as you talk to Bernadette about the upcoming budgets? What are you looking at?
She knows that. We've had these conversations and obviously we talk often. She's aware of it, but I'll ask this question, Michael. Do you want a governor, lieutenant governor pair that's going to be wishy-washy? That's going to be status quo? Or do you want the ones that come in and go, you know what? This is going to be kind of tough. This is not going to be fun. A lot of people are going to hate us, but the job needs to be done. And you know very well where I sit on that spectrum. I'm not in this to have people love me. I'm in this to do what the right thing is, because as I told you, and you and I have discussed this on the program many times, I'm doing this for my kids and my grandkids. If I was to end a lieutenant governor term and a lot of people didn't like me because I did the hard things, I made the hard choices, I'm going to sleep really well at night, Michael, and not be upset in the slightest, because there are hard choices in front of us. A lot of it to do with the budget. There are certainly other things that are important in the election system and the judicial system and inspector generals for fraud and corruption. All those things matter. They're all important. Making sure we have essential government services, funded appropriately, making sure our infrastructure, making sure the private sector is finally actually something that we're chasing after, and we're trying to plus up the private sector as opposed to leaving it be anemic and die in the vine, while the public sector is being taken care of. It should be focused on the private sector and investment and growth. And we need to see, just like the administration with Trump, the businesses are seeing a very pro-business administration right now. So like, hey, it's time to make money. Let's go. Let's build. Let's do things. Well, we need that, right, in this state. And so I think from my perspective on this, I look at it and go, am I doing this to just go have fun and chill out and be with my buddies in Juneau for, 4 years? Or am I doing this to go, this is going to make some people mad? It's going to be upsetting for people if we're looking at places for government efficiency, right? They're going to be upset if we're going to make it a election system that's going to be more secure. I've been called a racist by the whatever ACLU people down in Anchorage, and the different caucuses and whatever, right? Just because I had an election bill that was leaning towards security Why would that make you racist? Well, the reality is it doesn't. They want to have a system that's so loose that they can have anybody vote and manipulate it to their advantage. So my point is, Michael, we know it's going to be a tough time. We know there's going to be hard choices in front of us, but what team do you want? The one that's going to be willing, and knowing my track record, right, being willing to step up and take the punches, or the ones that maybe aren't going to be willing to take the punches, are going to be more of a go along to get along? Dude, I'm here to tell you, Michael, right now, go along to get along is not going to go well for us in the next few years.
Right.
Price of oil goes down. I just talked to a former person, and I won't say their name, but they were in the Dunleavy administration early on in the first administration. We had a long conversation yesterday about stuff, and him and I used to talk quite a bit. And he's like, if oil drops $50 a barrel, whatever, as they're predicting it will, he's like, we are in so much trouble for what we're going to do and how we're going to make this work. And where this is a discussion, right? We're already using most of the permanent fund earnings. What about taxes? Well, taxes are going to be great when we have an anemic and struggling private sector. That's really going to encourage, economic growth when we have, people filing big tax bills in the legislature to go after our primary industry right now. I mean, really? That's where we are with this. So
Right.
Yeah, you're not wrong, my friend. It's going to be tough.
No, I mean,
there's hard choices.
Yeah, well, yesterday we just had a conversation with Brad Keithley, looking at the EIA numbers for the projections on the oil, and yeah, it's going to be high 50s by the end of the year, and then they're saying going into 26, 27 down to $51, $52 a barrel, and we're right now figuring budgets on $68 a barrel. What's going to happen then? It's and we just had the news story, which again Brad's been talking about for 8 months here on the program, but they just had the news story that all these new projects are coming online, but we're going to make less money from them even though we're going to have higher production. I mean, this is things that nobody in the legislature seems to be acknowledging and realizing. The pucker factor is about to be high. I mean, it's about to be tough times. And as governor and lieutenant governor, I mean, you're going to have to be willing to take those hard choices and make those hard choices. I mean, if you get a Dunleavy type recall because Bernadette puts out a budget that is, austere or whatever,
that Scott Kendall doesn't like.
So yeah, so what? I mean, that's, the adults in the room have to start making the choices. That's what has to go on.
That's my point, Michael. You're going to have a team that's going to be not afraid to understand that public sentiment may turn against you to do what has to be done. And you're going to have to be able to take those punches and take the hits and be able to sleep at night and not be worried about the next election cycle, because that's what happens almost every time, right? Somebody says, I'm a one-term governor, I'm going to do what it takes. And about 2 years in, they go, well, actually, I got to kind of moderate my positions because I got to get elected again. I'm like, why? If you're only going to continue with policies that aren't being effective to begin with, why do 8 years of it? Isn't it better to go in and do 4 and get the job done and make the hard decisions and walk away holding your head high and sleeping well at night? Or is the important thing to be liked by enough people to get reelected to continue on the same marginal policies? And I'm not saying that about any particular person. I'm saying that as a philosophy, anybody. But often that's what you see amongst politicians, right? Is what does it take to get reelected? Right. So instead of taking the hard road, they take the easy road. They take the middle road that allows them to make people happy with them to get them reelected, as opposed to going, you know what? I was elected to do a job. And ironically, what's really funny to me, and one of the quintessential errors, you see like Trump, he didn't apologize. He doubled down on his policies and people love him for it. I think a lot of politicians make the mistake of going in and being real soft and thinking that somehow that's going to make them better loved. Well, the other side, if you're Republican, they already hate you. They're not going to like you. And you're going to then alienate your base. So what do you really give yourself left in the middle, right? I'm talking about being able to achieve the hardcore policies you're talking about, not just middle of the road stuff. So it's just, I don't know, is what it is. We'll see. But I can tell you right now, that's not my perspective, but you know that already. So.
How much input are you going to have? We're down to 4 minutes here. How much input are you going to have with Bernadette on things like the budget? Because again, that's not technically, that's not the lieutenant. Your purview is elections and holding the seal and being the guy in the background kind of thing. But how much input do you think you're going to have in this as you go through, especially since you have a 8-year track record of working through all this?
Well, I mean, I will tell you this, if Michelle and I did not feel comfortable after talking to Bernadette that we were going to be turned loose, for lack of a better term, on the things that matter, like elections and other things, if we did not feel like our input was going to be valued, or that our advice and mentorship, if you will, experience was going to be something that was going to be used and effective in the administration, I would have never said yes. So that's maybe the shortest and easiest answer for you. I feel like those things matter, and she is quite interested in the conversations and asking questions. So we feel like that is a positive. And you know very well, I've said many times, and you laugh about it, I take Michelle everywhere with me, right? Because she's got really good perception, intuition, and she's very comfortable with where we are with this. So you will never know until you go actually execute just how well things could go. But up front, I believe that, this is going to be a team effort. And I believe Bernadette is genuinely interested in going, what do I bring to the table? In fact, she told me that. And she's like, you were my number one pick because you are bringing all this to the table. I want that on the team.
Right.
So I'm hopeful, and I believe that, like I said, or I wouldn't be here, that we're going to be brought on for what we bring to the table, to be able to be a part of that. And to be frank, without giving away all the conversations, I think that's expected of me. When I hear some of the comments in our conversations, it's kind of like, I'm going to be. She wants me to be out there, making things happen.
Good.
And not just sitting at shadows, hanging out on the third floor doing nothing.
Quick. I know it's hard for you. Quick answer here. Tall man bad. It's a thing, right? I mean, the legislature just does not want the governor to have a win of any kind. That's not going to change if you get into the lieutenant governor's mansion with Bernadette. How are you going to deal with some of the personalities? I mean, any thoughts on how you're going to help make that so that it's not, again, short woman bad kind of syndrome? Quickly.
Yeah. What an irony between tall and short, right? If she's successful and gets elected. It's always a problem, Michael, but I'm going to circle back to maybe the most important thing, ranked choice voting repeal. If ranked choice voting is repealed, we're going to have a pretty good shot, I think, at getting Republican majorities in one or both bodies. It's going to be tough with a certain female senator out of Anchorage who's already thrown her lot in with the Democrats if that person gets reelected next November, because that's going to be a 10-10 split and be tough, but at least in the Senate. But the issue is really ranked choice voting. If we repeal it, there's a chance, I think, have Republicans come back home and we have majorities. If we have those majorities, then I think we have a really good chance at working with them to move Republican type legislation that's going to be good for us. If we don't, then yes, you could end up in the same situation where we get a good governor, lieutenant governor team, a good administration, but yet one or both bodies are controlled by Democrats. Well, then we're going to have the same kind of gridlock. That's going to be tough. You're going to have to negotiate. It's a different person, different time, but yeah, that's still going to be a potential problem, Michael. There's no way around it.
Less than 60, Mike. Folks want to find out more about the campaign. Where do they go? Who do they see? Are you guys doing meet and greets? What's going on? Quickly.
Yep, Bernadette for Governor. Go online. You can look it up, Google it. Obviously, whatever, it will pop right up. She is a freaking powerhouse. She is all over the place. She is at, I think she's doing about 10 events a night. A little bit facetious, but she is all over the place. We've got lots of events coming up. Go to the website. I suggest it. Go meet her, ask questions, and see what you think. Ask her the hard questions.
I hope we're going to have more conversations like this. State Senator Mike Shower, also candidate for Lieutenant Governor. Thanks, Mike. We appreciate you coming on board.
Of course.
Hold the line for just a second. Folks, we're out of time. We got to go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll see you tomorrow. All right, Mike. I guess final bite at the apple here. Last couple minutes. And no PFD next year, correct? I mean, I think that's kind of where we're at this point, right? I mean, we may get a PFD next year. It'll be minuscule because it's an election year. They can't not give us a PFD. But if it wasn't an election year, I don't think there'd be a PFD.
If we don't repeal ranked choice voting next year, Michael, I'm going to keep saying that one, and there's Democrat one or two bodies controlled by the Democrats after next year's election, then the PFD is probably gone, because especially the senators that get reelected will have 4 years to do whatever they want without worrying about it. And yes, the PFD is close to being extinct. That's the reality of where we sit. And you and I have been warning about this for years. This is nothing that should be a surprise, but that is in fact what I would expect to happen. So that's going to be one of those you're like, whatever. So unless we enact some type of fiscal policy plan that's going to be sustainable, that's going to have a spending cap and some lock of the PFD to get it off the table and put it in taxes, probably I don't want it, but like I said, you're going to have these different parts and pieces.
Right.
And then reductions, Michael, we can't forget that always gets excluded.
Right.
How do we reduce the cost of government? And it's going to be some things that people don't like, but I'm here to tell you things like still the 800 or 900 vacant PCNs that have been vacant for a year, 18 months, 2, 3, 4 years. That's 150, 170 million. Don't tell me we can't reduce the cost of government. We absolutely can, but it's things people don't want to do, and they're going to scream and cry about it, and they're going to write editorials in the ADN. They're going to file lawsuits because that's how desperate they are to hold on to those government, that government money that then flows into other hands like unions and others. So yes, it's going to be challenging for that very reason. Hey, I want to say one thing I forgot before. I think it's important.
Sure.
As I know we're time short, but it was an interesting thing, and it's actually the first question I asked Bernadette, and I think some people I saw how they made some comments on your program a few weeks ago where she had said, hey, if we're not the top seed, then we're out, right? When I asked her that's the first real question I said, hey, if I join your team and we're not the top seed after the jungle primary, what's your plan? And without skipping a beat, she said, we're out. We're going to get all of our resources and everybody behind whoever the best team is, because that's what's most important. To me, that mattered. And I know some people are going, well, you can't say that yet. And it's too early to do that. I understand the nuance, but what Bernadette was really trying to say and what I was really driving at is like, is this about you? Or is this about what's best for the state of Alaska? And there is no doubt in my mind that if it is the right thing for us to get out of the race based on who's there at that time, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and the string, right? That if it is best for us to get out of the race, Bernadette's not going to stay in it. We're going to get out and we need to stay in because of some numbers thing. We'll stay in, but if we don't, we're out. And that's important, Michael, that philosophy, that mindset.
No, we got to, because that's how you short circuit the whole ranked choice voting thing. That's how you blow it up. We saw that with Begich, and it worked. And that's what we're going to have to fight against until we can repeal this thing. All right, Mike Shower, my friend, thanks so much. It's good to talk with you. We'll catch you again here in the future. Okay.
Sounds good, brother. Have a good day.
Appreciate you coming on board. All right, folks, that's it for us today. Be kind, love one another, live well. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.